Have you ever walked into a Marvel or DC movie with high expectations with all your friends? All the early reviews came in saying it's a must-watch, a once-in-a-lifetime cinematic experience. Then around the 30-minute mark it hits you, this film sucks. But you stick around till the end to see if it gets any better, but it doesn't. And you walk out of the cinema feeling scammed. Well, this has happened to me many times. One time being Black Widow. I walked in with fairly high hopes, only to be disappointed within the first 20 minutes. So this then begs the question, what makes a good superhero movie? Let's use The Dark Knight as an example of a perfect superhero movie. Despite how big any movie is, the phrase, not as good as The Dark Knight, is always mentioned. Well, why is that? What does The Dark Knight have that makes it so good and that other superhero movies should try repeating? There are many great things about this work of art, but I shall try and focus on 3 of them in this video. The first thing is a good villain. Villains are often overlooked in many superhero movies. They are often just someone with the exact same power set as the hero, but decides to use the power for personal gains. And then when confronted by the hero and defeated, they hold an eternal grudge against the hero, causing more conflict down the line. However, as time passed, there have been few exceptions to this, with villains such as the Green Goblin, the Vulture, Killmonger, and even Thanos. This is because the villain's motive behind being evil isn't simply being evil for the sake of being evil, but stems from the deeper ideology of the villain that results in the villain making bad choices. Similarly, the Joker isn't bad for the sake of being bad. He's there trying to taunt Batman into messing with his own rules and ideology, as well as trying to rain anarchy upon Gotham. Harvey Dent's Two-Face is a major villain in comics. He could even be a major threat to Batman in a standalone movie himself, but is instead used as a pawn by the Joker, making the Joker even bigger of a threat to Batman. Similarly, Thanos uses Loki for his own personal gain and uses Loki as a pawn, trying to collect all the Infinity Stones. But Thanos is slightly different. He was built up over 20 movies, meaning that Infinity War could purely be about his story and not have to focus too much about the heroes, seeing as the heroes had their own standalone movies before them. Which leads me nicely onto my next point, being the bigger picture. Most villains are just side quests for the hero to develop and find new abilities to allow them to fight the bigger bad on the eventual horizon. We have seen this before with villains such as Thanos and Darkseid in the DC universe. Since all the major studios are focused on trying to build this universe that ends with a record-breaking finale that racks them up billions and billions of dollars. So amongst all of this, making a good villain isn't their main priority, as each standalone movie has to make enough money and set the hero up nicely for the massive team-up movie that's a few years down the line. We can clearly see this with Iron Man. Iron Man's villains have always been mediocre at best, but the main focus of the movie wasn't the villains, it was about him starting off as a rich, spoiled playboy to then becoming a paranoid, responsible superhero trying to prevent the very conflict that he causes. In amongst such a difficult character arc to portray, the villain isn't such a priority, so he doesn't face off against such good villains. But the difference is with the Dark Knight trilogy is that this isn't setting up a massive finale at the end. Each film could have just been the last of the trilogy, and it works well as standalone movies. You don't need to watch one of them to understand the other. However, we do see similar things happen with Batman in the Snyderverse, however, that is no more. We could even go as far as to say The Dark Knight isn't a superhero movie, it is more of a crime thriller, as it only loosely follows the structure of a superhero movie, with the origin story, a superpowered villain, a damsel in distress, and a fireworks finale. The fact that there being no origin story can be eliminated due to the fact that this is a sequel. And the final fight isn't purely about the villain trying to blow up the city, but is instead a battle between ideals, with the Joker trying to prove that the people of Gotham are selfish and will turn on each other when given the opportunity. But in the end, we see that humanity wins. We do get a hint of a damsel in distress with Rachel Dawes being captured by the Joker. However, unlike most superhero movies, the hero fails in trying to save her, and even ends the movie losing. Which brings me on to my next point, scale. The movie ends with the hero losing, which never really happens because the majority of the family audiences going to watch the movie want a happy ending so that the kids don't cry leaving the cinema. Another movie which ends with the heroes losing is a small movie called Infinity War. It racked around $2 billion at the box office and set a standard for superhero movies that only very few movies can live up to. For example, Endgame, No Way Home, and even the upcoming Kang Dynasty and sequels. Because of these movies, our expectations are set too high. And so when we go to see a movie that is simply a grounded story about the hero trying to deal with the consequences of their actions, we feel cheated and not fulfilled. And the main problem for this is purely our expectations. After getting such big scale projects such as Endgame and Far From Home, Black Widow seemed a lot less entertaining, as we know that there's so much more possible in a movie. This wasn't really much of an issue when The Dark Knight released, since the superhero movie genre was only really beginning and going into full flow with the release of Iron Man around the same time. Therefore, there was no Justice League finale, if that ever happens, or Infinity War or Endgame to compare it to, meaning that it could set the bar really high for all subsequent superhero movies to release after. Overall, comparing every movie to The Dark Knight isn't necessarily fair, since The Dark Knight is a crime thriller as much as it is a superhero movie, meaning comparing a comedic superhero movie to a darker, serious movie wouldn't make sense. And now all these major companies are all focused on trying to make billions from these movies, and their main goal is trying to build a universe which wasn't the goal of the Dark Knight trilogy. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like, share and subscribe, and leave a comment down below telling me why you guys think The Dark Knight is held as the gold standard for superhero movies. And also be sure to check out some of my other videos.